Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to WHIMS. And today I'm going to give you my review for Godzilla Minus One. And Godzilla Minus One came out in 2023, literally at the very end of 2023. And it's a Japanese sort of historical disaster film. And I say that because it's not really in the same tradition as what people would expect from something like Godzilla King of Monsters or Godzilla vs. Kong or whatever. Like, it's not that kind of film. There's not really big budget destruction scenes. Well, there are a couple, but it's not the focus. It's not, explosions and over the top, CGI special effects, followed by characters making pop culture references and jokes and things like that. This film is a period piece, and the version that I saw was in black and white. And there's a purpose to that because this film does feel like a very interesting story. It's basically a story that follows a kamikaze pilot by the name of Shikishima, and he is a kamikaze pilot who, after being given his orders to fly to Pearl Harbor and administer the attack, he decides to abandon ship, abandon his mission, and go on an island called or Udao, and essentially under the pretext of repairing his engine. He has the pretext that he's going there to basically repair his engine, and he meets a guy called Tachibana, who is a ex-pilot, but he's also a military man and an engineer. And he basically gets into a conversation with him, and Shikishima basically he has doubts about the war effort in Japan and over in America and all the rest of it, the Second World War at large. And he essentially feels very guilt-ridden, and he wonders, well, is it all worth it? And Tachibana has this entire speech about how sometimes we do have to, ask these questions at some points in war. Sometimes we do have to ask, is it worth it? Is the powers that be ever truly right? And he didn't really have an answer, really, in many respects. But one night when he's there waiting for his ship to be repaired, waiting for his plane to be repaired, he ends up encountering the Kijou god of monsters himself, Godzilla, and he ends up massacring an entire island of people, and Shikishima ends up, being incredibly traumatized, and he feels incredibly beaten down and just frozen with fear. Like when Tachibana says to him, shoot the damn gun, like shoot the damn thing, like our people are dying, our men are dying, like shoot him. He literally has very shaky fingers and he doesn't know what to do with himself, like he's genuinely afraid. And this haunts him for the rest of his life. Like as soon as he gets home to Ginza, he ends up, feeling absolutely traumatized. Like his actual sister greets him and says, how dare you return? That you've disgraced us. You've disgraced us by returning to your home as a kamikaze pilot, because he didn't carry out his mission. And all this carnage came as a result of that, she feels. And he genuinely does feel horrible. He feels guilty. But he feels like there's a reason why he lived. And that's the big theme of this particular film. It's about guilt. It's about what happens when we survive trauma and what happens when we deal with these sorts of different situations in life, where we are either, soldiers in a war, or we're, making these very big decisions. And all it takes is a moment to make one big decision. And it's that one big decision that can end up, affecting the entire course of, an entire country's future. And in many cases, Shikishima ends up, thinking to himself, this horrible thing happened to me, and all the while I did nothing. And it feels almost like fate's come down from the heavens and said, we're going to punish you for defiling the Emperor, and we're going to make you watch as your friends die. And we're just going to make sure that you sit there and soak it all in, because it's all your fault. But he meets a girl who ends up, she has a baby in her arms who she calls Akiko. And the three of them end up making a little family together, like a little impromptu or a sort of found family, almost a literal found family. And they end up raising this child and together. And one night he has a nightmare about his time on the island and encountering Godzilla. And it's during this time that he ends up, finally breaking down to his wife, his partner of circumstance, saying that, telling her what happened that night, and he feels very ashamed, that he feels almost like, God has told him, like, you, for defying the Emperor, we're going to make sure that you sit here and you essentially watch your friends die at the hands of this great creature that's come out from the depths, almost like it's, planned by God almost. And he goes, what? Why did I get to live when all these other people had families and mothers who loved them and wives and children and things like that? Why didn't they get to go home to their families and I lived? And she goes to him, look, deal with it. Like, I literally watched my entire family die in a burning building during the bombs, and I literally survived. And what you've got to do in this scenario is you've got to make their deaths mean something. You've got to make sure, well, not make their deaths mean something, but you've got to make your living mean something. You survived for a reason, and therefore you have to make sure that you survive for a particular purpose. And your particular purpose is to be there for Akiko. You are there for Akiko, so therefore you must live. That's why you're here. That's why you're here doing these things. You are here because you are there for a purpose. And that's why he is there. So that's what he needs to tell himself every single time it happens. But during this particular discussion, she goes off to get a job interview at a particular... It's not really made clear whether she's a secretary or whether she's a general or something. But she goes to go and get this job, either working at a newspaper or something. And she's on her way to work, and that's when Godzilla attacks. And it's during this moment where I was genuinely on the edge of my seat. Like, I really was genuinely terrified for all these characters. Like, when they were in the thick of this disaster, I was terrified for them. I was terrified for the wife. I was terrified by Shikishima. I was really terrified for him. I was very terrified for his wife. And I was genuinely on the edge of my seat. So when she, spoiler alert by the way for this entire film, when something happens to her, I really was, I had my hand over my mouth, like I thought, no, and I was genuinely unhappy. And then I found myself going, oh, I really want to get this Godzilla now. Like, I love Godzilla, but part of me just felt like, I want to get this big fucking lizard now. I want them to kill this thing because of how evil it is. But it was such a good film, and I really loved it. And I am quite tempted to sort of do a spoiler-filled film. But what's very interesting is that this film was really good. And I do almost want to talk about the ending, but I do want to give a spoiler-free review. But this film was fantastic, and I really loved it. I was on the edge of my seat. I'm so happy I got to see it in black and white, because I feel like, even though the colour version is probably still good, I feel like something about this film needs to be seen in black and white. Something about it needs to be seen in black and white. But this film was incredible. This film was such a fascinating meditation on not just the guilt of an individual and him having basically survivor's guilt, but it's basically the survival and the future of an entire civilization, an entire nation, that sort of comes at the heart of this particular film, because there is this almost sense of distrust that the Japanese people have with the Japanese government after what happened in World War II. Like, when people are receiving word that there's this creature in the ocean that's going to rise up and kill everybody or attack nations and cities, people are immediately distrustful of the government, because they basically said, we want to keep it all quiet. We want to make sure that no one knows about this until we're absolutely sure. And then people going, oh, that's just typical of the Japanese government, that they're always, using us as, the gag patrol, whatever they're called, and we're led to our deaths, so that if any of us survive, we get to keep quiet, but they get to keep quiet as well, so that they can do all these other things. And it really is quite frustrating, because at the end of the day, that was just the tradition of a lot of Japanese citizens, or a lot of the people in the Japanese government. They had to follow orders, so they couldn't just basically go against the emperor. And this was after World War II. This was after the reign of Emperor Hirohito, who was a psychopath when he was in office. So when he's given the job of being an emperor, you had to follow his orders. Otherwise, it would be the absolute disgrace if you didn't follow orders. Hence why Shikishima feels so guilt-ridden when he is literally there in those tense and having these discussions with both his wife and all these other characters, he does feel the weight of the war on his shoulders. And there's even a moment during this scene that, why do you want to keep, looking for this creature? Why are you so haunted by this creature? And he goes, well, it's because my war hasn't ended yet. And that is a great way of showing that sometimes in war, even if you are way past it, even if you're decades away from the war, you will never be rid of it. It's like a ghost that keeps clinging to your shoulder and keeps following you. That's something that's happening to Shikishima, and it's very well articulated. And the actor who played Shikishima has a moment in this film where he just screams. And it's that scream that feels like it should be Oscar-worthy or award-worthy. It's such a good moment. And I really did feel like that its examination of guilt, and not just the guilt of one individual, but the entire guilt of a nation after what happened in World War II, and sort of feeling like, the abuse of power and the misuse of power was sort of the thing that makes people think about, do they trust the government? Do they trust, do the civilians trust the government? And that's why at the end of the film, or towards the climax of the film, the entire operation to stop Godzilla is purely civilian-led. It's never done by the government. And I love the fact that this film had the confidence to just focus on the little guys. They just focused on, the individuals, the civilians. There was no references to the emperor or anything like that, or any of these other, great big powerful people in office or anything like that. It was purely civilian led, and I really like that, because this feels like a very well written Roland Emmerich film. And I want to go into a little bit more detail, but I will save that for another video. But this film is phenomenal. If you want to see Godzilla Minus One, please go and check it out now. It's currently available on Netflix. There is the Japanese original dub with the English subtitles, and then there is the American dub, which you can also use. So if you're a fan of dubs and you don't want to read subtitles, you can definitely watch the dubbed version. It's a really good film. It's really thought-provoking, very atmospheric, and if you can, please see it in black and white, because I think it adds so much more. It adds so much more atmosphere. It feels like an Akira Kurosawa film. It honestly does. It has such great atmosphere, such great characterization, and such great exploration of its themes. And the ending, I really love it. It feels like a very It's a Wonderful Life ending, where it makes you feel so good that you almost kind of forgive it, because a lot of people could say that if this ending was done in the hands of Roland Emmerich, it could very easily be seen as contrived or very forced or very Hollywoodized. But what I think it does very well is it establishes the theme that when you are a survivor surviving trauma, you have to make your life, your survival mean something. You have to make someone sacrifice, and you have to make your living as a result of that sacrifice mean something. And in the case of Shikishima, he had to survive to look after Akiko and his new family. He had to look after them. He had to provide for them. He had to live. So when the ending happens, it works, and it is completely serviceable, because it manages to just articulate the fact that it manages to, really work on that theme, I think. So yeah, a lot of people could very easily debate, well, why did this character need to live and this character need to live? It's because the themes of the film says it needs to happen. So it does feel like an old fable in that way, but this film was phenomenal. I would highly recommend people watch it and check it out. And if you do want to see more people discuss the Godzilla Minus One film, a friend of mine from America called Christian of Canto 1408, he's just done his video for Godzilla Minus One, and he's done it with a group of his friends. And I would highly recommend checking out his video as well, and please subscribe to his channel. He's a really good YouTuber, and he deserves more subscribers. And yeah, that's my review for Godzilla Minus One. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you're all having a very good day. This has been Joshua with Whimsical and Interesting Musings, or WHIMS. I hope you're having a very good day, and if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more, please subscribe for more. Take care, bye for now.